My name is בארי Salamon, Salamon, and I'm interviewing my father, Mr. Emanuel Salamon. Okay, first of the battery of questions is on ghettos. What was the name of your ghetto?
Interviewee.
And do you remember the dates of stay?
No, but it was Pesach, right after Pesach.
Remember the year?
I believe it was 1943 or 44, I'm not sure. I was too young to remember all the dates.
Were you in the same town before the ghetto was set up?
No.
In that case, in what places were you between September 1st, 1939 and the establishment of the first ghetto you were in?
I was in my hometown, which was Shadosh.
And that was in Hungary, right?
That's correct.
Okay. When was the ghetto in your town set up?
There was no ghetto as such, except that they took all the Jews together in the Jewish school. We had a school which had secular and Hebrew education, and it took all the Jews from our town, which was Shadosh, into this school. And of course it was too small to house all the Jews, so we were temporarily outside in the schoolyard for a few days until they took us to the first ghetto, which was Interviewee.
Okay. What anti-Jewish actions were taken before the ghetto was established, including pogroms? State dates and details if you can, and organized by Germans or others or jointly.
I can't remember dates.
Just anti-Jewish actions. Okay.
But there were hundreds and thousands of anti-Jewish actions. The earliest memory that I can remember when I was a young boy, one time we came home from Cheder at night, and it was a very heavy snowfall that particular day. It was about 7 o'clock at night. As we left the Cheder, a whole bunch of shkutzim attacked us with stones and all kinds of sticks, and they beat us up pretty badly, both the Rebbe and us. And after that, there were literally thousands of, or hundreds and thousands of anti-Jewish actions, such as spitting in your face as you walked on the street, dragging on your payas, calling you dirty Jew, bastard Jew, drop-dead Jew. Many a times we got attacked from behind without any warning. Most of the time I had a lot of courage and I retaliated. One particular incident that I remember, one Sunday morning as I walked out of my home yard, as I stepped out on the street, a soldier, a Hungarian soldier, gave me such a smack on the face. I didn't even know what happened to me, but he gave me such a smack that I just dropped on the floor. And I got up and I spit right in his face, right in the middle. And I started running, of course. But of course he caught up to me. And he beat me up so badly that my two front teeth were loosened up and blood was streaming down from my mouth profusely. I came running home. My mother saw me. Olewa Shalom. She almost had a heart attack when she saw me. Of course, they called the doctor, and it was nothing too serious. I also remember another incident where I carried a blackjack with me, and a Shagets really beat me hard, and I snuck the blackjack out of my pocket, and I hit him right across his face. Instantly, he was covered with blood, and I ran away. I ran into my house, into my yard, and we had piles and piles of wood stored away for winter heating. And I hid behind these piles of wood for a number of days because as a result of this incident, this boy had to be hospitalized, and the police, the Hungarian police of the town, came looking for me. And of course my mother said that she didn't know where I was, and I was hidden there for a number of days. Somehow or other we had some contact with the police, and apparently through smearing or some other methods which I wasn't aware of at the time because I was too young to understand. But the police stopped bothering me.
Okay. Did any of your family live in the same ghetto with you?
Yes.
Who?
My mother, my 3 brothers, my aunt, and my cousin. We lived together in one home before we were taken away.
What work did you do in the ghetto?
None whatsoever. There was no work assigned at all.
If you were a refugee in the ghetto from another place, were you?
Yes, from Shahruspat,
Okay.
I was a
So
refugee. in
what was the
Shahruspat.
local inhabitants' attitude towards you?
Well, at first we were quartered in the Jewish quarter. And we were very much welcomed by the inhabitants, by the Jewish inhabitants of Chateau Ayuhel. Of course, we were jammed into homes. Sometimes as many as 10, 12 people sleeping on the floor in a room. That was it.
Okay. Was it allowed to leave the ghetto at first?
At first, yes.
For how long?
Only for a short while. I'm not sure exactly of the hour.
Okay. What was the approximate size of the ghetto?
It was quite a bit. It was mainly the heavily populated Jewish area of Chateau Ayuhel. I don't exactly know the perimeter or the size.
Were there one or more ghettos in the same town?
No, only that one.
Was there a wall?
No,
Was there a wooden fence?
no.
A barbed wire fence?
Later on, I believe, if I remember correctly, they did have some kind of a wire.
But
I'm not
until that,
exactly
there was
sure.
no physical boundary?
No physical boundary except the police were guarding it.
Okay. Organization of guard at gates. Do you remember the hours of entry, the pass systems, the nature of guards? Were they Jewish, German, Polish, or other?
The guards were originally Hungarian gendarmerie and various Hungarian police.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge of what went on outside of Nazi territory?
No.
Were there radios?
Yes, there were.
Were there underground newspapers and leaflets?
There was some, but I was too young to know about them. I do remember listening to radios, particularly to the BBC broadcasts.
Mm-hmm. Did you send or receive letters from abroad?
No,
Okay.
not at this time. We did before Hungary turned into a Nazi state.
Yes, okay. When did you know the truth about the extermination and the gas chambers?
Not until I was liberated, till after the war.
Till after the war. Did you have any personal or family plans to escape? What were they?
We did discuss it many a times. As a matter of fact, my older brothers wanted to escape at night from the ghetto, but my mother became hysterical and she wanted to keep the family unit together.
Okay. What did you eat in the ghetto at different times? If you can remember the size of the ration, the method of distribution, and how it was distributed.
I don't really remember all these details. I know we had some food and it was adequate. Where it came from or how it was supplied, I'm not sure of.
Okay. The next battery of questions is on concentration camps. Mr. Salamon was in 3 concentration camps, so we will do one at a time. Which was the first camp that you were in?
Auschwitz.
Okay, what was, if you can remember, the date of arrival at the camp?
I don't remember.
Do you remember from where it was and by what method of transportation?
It was from Chateau Ayuhel, the ghetto. We were taken by cattle cars to Auschwitz
Okay, did you arrive alone or with members of your family?
with members of my family.
What happened to them?
My mother was killed and my kid brother was killed. My aunt and my cousin who lived with us, as stated previously, were killed also.
Okay. Was there a selection on arrival?
Yes, there was.
Did you know what it meant?
No.
Describe the location and size of the camp, its guard system. When was the camp set up?
I have no idea when the camp was set up because when we came there, the camp was in existence and
Okay.
it was very well mechanized. It was running very smoothly.
So what about the location and the size and its guard system?
Well, as we came off the trains, there were literally maybe hundreds of Nazi SS troopers with machine guns and German Shepherd dogs watching us. Then they called out on loudspeakers that women separate and men separate, and we started to line up, and we didn't even know what was going on at the end of the line, but by the time I came close to it, I realized that there was some sort of a selection going on. And we were thinking that it must be for work assignments.
Okay. Do you remember any of the commanders, officers, and men?
No. I was too young to know or to realize all
Did you characterize them or not?
Oh, they were the typical Nazi troopers.
How many Germans guarded the camp?
I don't know exact numbers, but a lot of them.
Approximately, can you approximate?
Well, the particular camp, which was at Zigeunerlager, which I was assigned to, there must have been a few hundred.
Okay. How many non-Germans, such as Ukrainians, or, you know?
There were primarily, those were the block leaders and barrack leaders. None Germans, but there were Germans amongst them too.
Now, were the Germans SS, or did they belong to other units?
It looked like SS to me.
Do you remember incidents that could be used to accuse individual Nazis as war criminals?
I don't remember the names, but I saw many incidents where they hung and killed, friends of mine. One particular incident that I remember was a twin brother by the name of Stendig that came from my hometown, which were my classmates. I saw them one morning hung in the latrine.
Okay. What was the composition of the inmates? Numbers, ages, sex, Jews and non-Jews, towns or areas of origin? The composition.
It was mostly Hungarian Jews, and by the majority was from our area.
And approximately how many?
I couldn't estimate.
And the ages, approximately?
Ages were all ages.
Sex, male?
I would say from the age of 12 to the age of 50.
And they were mostly Jews?
Mostly.
Okay. What did the work?
Not all.
What did the work consist of?
There we didn't do any work in Auschwitz, not at all. I was in the Zigeunerlager, and I was in a barrack where there were only youngsters like myself.
Describe the capos, good ones, bad ones.
They're all very bad ones.
Describe the food.
There was only one slice of black bread and one plate of soup, which, if you want to call it soup, but it was mostly water and some kind of vegetables in it. But that was the daily diet.
Describe the daily routine.
There was absolutely nothing to do. We were just lolled around and just moped around in the barrack and outside the immediate barrack we were in.
Were people killed? How and when?
Some. If for the least little violation, they would just kill any kid for no good reason. And just other than just violating some small ordinance.
Who were these? Who were the people who killed? Were they Germans, non-German guards?
They're German guards, and there was some Polish, particularly Polish, even Jewish Polish guards that beat quite a few kids up very severely.
Were there actions in the camp?
Actions such as what?
I don't know. I guess it means exterminations. I don't know.
There was no other actions other than just moping around and...
Okay. Were there attempts to escape?
I don't remember of any, because they did warn us that those wires were electrified, and whoever comes near it is automatically electrocuted.
Okay, was there an organized underground?
No, not that I know of.
No planned resistance?
Not that I know of.
What about contacts with the outside?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Were there any attempts at cultural activity?
No, none whatsoever.
Were there any children in the camp, hidden or open?
Well, I was with all the children in this particular barrack in the Zigeuner Lager. That's all there were is children.
How old were you at the time then?
I was 14. Not even. I was just about 14.
What were the relations between the Jewish inmates? Was there an antagonism between groups from the same town, between them and from different towns?
Not really. We were all in the same boat.
What about between Polish and other Jews?
There were no Polish Jews there except the Polish Jews that were that had assigned work, that were kapos.
What about between Jews and non-Jews?
There were no non-Jews there.
Non-Jews there, okay.
Well, the only non-Jews there were was the SS troopers.
Did you receive help from fellow inmates? Please give details.
No.
Were you ill? How did you recover?
I was not ill at the time. I was in pretty good condition. The only problem was that there was no beds to sleep on at all, and the barrack was made up of asphalt floors, and it was extremely uncomfortable to lay down at night, and it was cold. And it was miraculous that more kids did not get sick.
Was there medical attention of any kind?
None.
None?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Describe the clothing, the sanitary conditions.
Well, as we arrived, they took all our clothing and they took us into a shower area where we all showered, and when we came out they gave us a top and a pant which was striped, prison garb. That's the only thing we had. And wooden those wooden shoes that you use, beach shoes, like we use here.
Did you or anyone else receive mail officially or parcels?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, what was the next camp you were in?
The next camp, they took us, actually they didn't take us from Auschwitz. I heard that they were going to use us for experiments, medical experiments. That was the rumor. So I heard that the next barrack, which were composed of older people, I heard that they would be assigned and taken out of the camp, taken away somewhere to work. So I felt that as long as they wanted us to work, my best bet would have been to go away with that particular barrack. So at night I jumped through the window and I got into that barrack. Sure enough, the following day they took that whole barrack on cattle wagons and they took us to Mauthausen, which is in Austria.
Okay. Do you remember the date of arrival at Mauthausen?
I don't know exactly the date, but it was 4 weeks after I was in the Zigeuner Lager that I left Auschwitz.
So you came straight from Auschwitz?
Auschwitz straight to Mauthausen, which took a considerably long time to go.
By what method of transportation?
Cattle wagons.
Okay. Did you arrive alone or with members of your family?
No, I was separated at Auschwitz from my brothers.
What happened to them?
I did not know until I was liberated what happened to them.
Was there a selection on arrival?
No.
Okay. Describe the location and size of the camp, its guard system. When was the camp set up?
I have no idea of the details of the camp setup and the guard system. All I remember when we arrived was a raining day. It was pouring, and we were outside completely naked, standing all day. And the following day we were assigned to Guzensville.
Okay. Can you remember the names of the commanders, officers, and men? What do you remember?
No, I do not remember their names.
Okay. How many Germans guard the camp?
Which one?
You're talking about the Mauthausen.
Mauthausen, a lot. I don't have no idea how many, but there were quite a lot.
How many non-Germans, such as Ukrainians, if there were any?
Some, there were. As a matter of fact, they were not the outside guards. They were in the inside. They did the dirty work inside.
Do you remember what kind of guards they were?
There were German political prisoners. There were Polish, primarily mostly Polish.
Okay. Were the Germans SS or they belonged to other units?
Mostly SS.
Do you remember incidents that could be used to accuse individual Nazis as war criminals?
No.
What was the composition of the inmates? Numbers, ages, sex, Jews and non-Jews, towns or areas of origin?
I only saw male prisoners there. There were Jews there from practically every European country that I can remember. Well, mostly there were Polish Jews.
How many? Do you remember the numbers?
I have no idea.
Okay. What did the work consist of?
At Mauthausen, I did not have any work because I was transferred within 24 hours to Gusenszwo.
Okay. It's futile to ask the rest of the questions because Mauthausen was only a checkpoint. He was only there for 24 hours, and he a transfer point, and you don't know any of the other answers to the other questions. So we might as well go on to Gusen 2 now. The third camp you were in was Gusen 2. Do you remember the date of arrival at the camp, and from where and by what method of transportation?
It was right after from Mauthausen, and it took us by truck. As a matter of fact, before we went to Gusenszwo, we stopped off at Gusen 1, but I don't even remember for what purpose. And from Gusen 1, we marched to Gusenszwo.
Okay. Did you arrive alone or with members of your family? What happened to them?
My family was separated from me on the day we arrived to, on a day or maybe perhaps a few days after we arrived in Auschwitz. And I did not know what happened to them until after the liberation when I came home to my hometown.
Okay. Was there a selection on arrival at Gusen 2?
No.
Okay. Describe the location and the size of the camp, its guard system.
It wasn't a very big camp. If I remember correctly, this is only a rough estimate, I would say there were maybe 40 or 50 barracks, or maybe even less. But I would say it was near somewhere around that size.
Anything about its guard system?
It was, they had these towers with an SS guarding it like every 50 or 100 feet perhaps. And of course it was electrified wires all around the camp.
Do you know when the camp was set up?
No.
Do you remember any of the names of the commanders, officers, and men?
No, I remember their faces, but I do not remember their names.
Okay. How many Germans guarded the camp?
It's hard to estimate, but I would say maybe 100.
How many non-Germans?
There were no non-German guards. Everyone was a German uniform guard outside.
Were they SS or did they belong to other units?
At the beginning they were SS. Later on there were quite a bit of Wehrmacht soldiers.
Do you remember any incidents that could be used to accuse individual Nazis as war criminals?
Well, I don't know their names, so I couldn't possibly say exactly what they did, because their names I don't remember regardless, but there were a lot of atrocities, hundreds of them.
And what was the composition of the inmates? The numbers, ages, sex, Jews or non-Jews, towns or areas of origin? Like numbers first.
This camp, they had, well, it's hard to estimate the numbers. It's just a guess. I would say maybe 30 or 40,000 or maybe less, I'm not sure. But there were prisoners here from all over Europe. There were French prisoners, there were Russian prisoners, there were Polish prisoners, there were Romanian prisoners, there were all from all over Europe. There were no British prisoners.
Do you remember the approximate ages?
Their ages were, I would say, somewhere around from 12 to 50.
And sex?
All male only.
Any non-Jews?
Yes, there were a lot of non-Jews. A lot of political prisoners, such as German, Polish, French, some French, Yugoslavians, Ukrainians, all kinds. A lot of non-Jews here.
Okay. What did the work consist of?
The first work assignment was for me in an airplane factory which was dug out in a mountain. And my work consisted of primarily making the plant a bit larger, therefore it was constantly digging out the earth and making it larger.
Describe the capos.
They were primarily German political prisoners and some Polish ones. There were mostly bad ones, mostly very, very bad ones. There were one or two nice ones amongst them.
Describe the food in Gusen 2.
Gusen 2, we had breakfast in the morning, which consisted of a loaf of bread, dark bread, and a plate of soup. And after the work, which we came home at night, it was the same thing, repeated.
Describe the daily routine in Gudentu.
Well, in the morning we got up early. I don't remember the time, well, I never knew the time, but it was pretty early in the morning. And we had to go, had to be standing at, what do they call that?
Attention?
Attention for a while until a German officer counted us all up to make sure that nobody snuck away at night. Then we took showers and we had breakfast and they took us to work. At night we came home and we just had breakfast and that was it.
Okay, were people killed?
A lot of them.
How?
Most of the killings occurred by direct beatings, and some of them, or I would say lots of them, from exhaustion and overwork and underfed. Most people, after a few months of working in this camp, became nothing but skeletons, because the food, of course, was never adequate, and the work was very hard. We were beaten at the work. We were guarded by SS troops at work, and they beat us for no good reason. If you were just a little slow in doing your work, it would mean nothing for an SS soldier to come over and beat you up, or even call you out and give you 10 or 15 or 25 lashes. And after 25 lashes, you were never the same anymore. You became a subhuman person.
Were these Germans, who these guards were? They were Germans or any non-Germans?
There were mostly Germans, but there were inside some German capos, which were also prisoners, but they had much more privileges than the ordinary prisoner had.
Okay. Were there attempts to escape?
Not that I remember, but we did hear some shootings at night, many a times. And mostly we found out in the morning that some of the people were so disgusted or didn't care about life anymore, so they just went against the electric wire. They just wanted to get killed because they couldn't take the pressure and the hard work and the burden.
Was there any organized underground?
Not that I know of.
Was there any contacts with the outside?
Not that I knew of any.
Were there any attempts at cultural activity?
None whatever.
Were there any children in the camp, hidden or open?
Well, I was a child. I was considered a child.
So, like, how many?
I would say the lowest age was around 12, 13. There were very few at 12. Most of them would be 13 and up.
What were the relations between the Jewish inmates? Was there antagonism between groups from the same town, between groups from different towns, or between Polish and other Jews, or between Jews and non-Jews? Please give details.
There were antagonisms, but primarily mostly for survival. There was some bad feeling amongst the Polish Jews. They felt that they were there for a number of years, and we Hungarian Jews just had gotten to camp, and they were like making fun at us that we couldn't take the hard work, and they have been doing that for so many years, and they have survived. So, but most of them were nice. However, some of them were subhuman.
What about between Jews and non-Jews? The relations there?
There were constant antagonism amongst Jews and non-Jews. They were always against the Jews, even the prisoners that were in camp.
Yeah. Did you receive help from fellow inmates? Please give details.
Well, sometimes, primarily not that much from fellow inmates. There was one particular German capo who took a liking to me because I was so young, and he had extra rations, so he would give me almost every day. He would give me some of his own ration after he was pretty satisfied with his own, and he had some extras. He always gave me some extra. That helped me to survive.
Were you ill, and how did you recover?
I was at one time very ill, and it took me into a small Red Cross type of a unit, a small recovery type of a unit, and they didn't do any medication, but there was a doctor there, and the only thing that you did here is that you didn't have to go to work, and they gave you like a little time to recover. However, most of the serious cases where they saw that they couldn't get any more work out of these bad cases of sicknesses, usually they killed them in the middle of the night. There was always random selection. Besides that, random selection of sick people. And the German capo, who was the head of this particular unit, would go around like the middle of the night and wake up some people. Every morning there was quite a sizable mountain of dead bodies right in front of this unit. Or usually a truck would take them away to dead people and would take them to Mauthausen. From what we heard, this is where they burned the dead bodies. There was a crematorium which we found out eventually over there.
How did you recover from your illness?
By sheer luck, and by not having any work for a week or two, I became quite a lot better, and I regained my strength.
Okay. Was there medical attention of any kind, official or clandestine, and were these by German or Jewish personnel?
This was by a prison doctor, and there was very little. A little bit there was, but nothing serious attempts to make people recover. However, there was like bandages and things like that, but nothing more than that. There was no operations or no severe attempt of helping the sick.
Describe the clothing and the sanitary conditions in Gusen 2.
The clothing was nothing but a prison garb, which consisted of a striped top and pant, also a wooden platform shoe.
Okay. And
sanitary conditions were at times very bad. However, the German capos, who was responsible for each barrack, made sure that it was kept clean, because if a German officer would come in to inspect the cleanliness, he would be the one to get it, to suffer. As a result, he kept the barracks pretty clean.
Okay. Did you or anyone else receive mail or partials officially?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Now I just want to ask one more question on Gusen 2. I want to know in detail about the liberation of Gusen 2.
That's quite a story by itself, because approximately 4 weeks before the liberation, they took all Jews out of this camp. We were marching for weeks, I don't remember how long, but we were marching quite a while, and they marched us into a forest. In the middle of the forest there were a number of barracks. I don't remember the exact name of this camp. I forgot the name, can't think of it right now, but it was outside of Welch in Austria. When we got to this camp, there were quite a lot of other prisoners here, but there were no non-Jews here at all. Only Jewish prisoners were gathered here by the tens of thousands. This camp was guarded by the Wehrmacht. There was SS officers at its helm, but the guards were Wehrmacht. Here we got no food whatsoever. And apparently this was a camp of complete annihilation. Hundreds and thousands of bodies were forming mountains of bodies. And the stench from the dead was so bad that the SS officers that used to come in at the beginning to shoot prisoners at random with machine guns, they stopped coming in because they were afraid to come in even with masks on. So they kept their distance from us. However, there was no food here whatsoever, and I lived on primarily sucking the tree bark and eating grass and all kinds of leaves. However, about a week before, or maybe a few days before the liberation, a Red Cross man came into camp with a truck, and he handed out half a pieces of chocolate to each inmate. And I think this half a piece of chocolate is what saved my life. May 4th, on a Friday, in the early morning we heard very heavy bombardment in the near distant. And this was going on intermittently all day long. As nightfall started to descend on this camp, all the Wehrmacht officers, the guards, took off. And they just left the camp, and we realized that we were free. There was no guards there at all. I had no strength to walk out of the camp, because by this time I was nothing but skin and bones, a living skeleton. However, some of the ones that were brought to this camp a few weeks before, that were not in concentration camps, they were in work groups throughout Hungary and Czechoslovakia, or even some in Austria. They were fed pretty well, and they had their strength. So what happened is they raided the magazine where the German soldiers had their provisions, and they brought all kinds of vegetables and bread and other food into the camp. Some inmates, some of the prisoners, were lucky enough to get, I should say unlucky, to get a hold of a considerable amount of food, and they overate, and they died from overeating because their intestines were not used to eating this type of food or as much as they did. In a way, I was lucky because all I was able to get a hold of is a piece of radish, and that sort of kept me through Friday night. And Saturday morning I was able to get another piece of vegetable, and I regained my strength somehow. It was more daring and psychological than really physical strength. And I walked out of the camp, and as I walked out of the camp, there was a highway where we saw the American troops. At that time, we didn't even know what they were Americans. But somebody noticed that USA mark on the tanks, the very heavy guns and tanks were moving on this particular highway. I walked as far as Welch on Saturday, and late Saturday afternoon I was completely exhausted. So much so that I had no strength to walk anymore. I just sat down on the street. All I remember that an American Red Cross truck pulled up next to me, and they put me into the truck. After that, it was a blank to me until one morning when I got up in a German hospital, which was in Welch. I started feeling a little better, and from there, in the middle of the night, I ran away because we made up before the war, whatever happens to us, that we should come back to my hometown of Saraspatak to see who survived. At this time, I didn't know who or if any one of the members of my family survived. So therefore, I hastened to run out of the hospital to go back to Saraspatak.